You wouldn't have to enter your name. I have no idea.
Oh, come on. Sarah, testing my mic. Can you hear me?
I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, very good. So 7.0. Adoption, modification of the agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passed. 7.2, approve student assessment workshop minutes for January 17th, 2022. Any?
I move to approve the student assessment workshop minutes for January 17th, 2022.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passed. 7.3, approve regular session meeting minutes for January 19th, 2022.
I move to
Approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, please vote. Motion passed. 7.4, approve program evaluation workshop minutes from February 1st, 2022.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right. A motion and a second. Please vote unless there's any other discussion. All right, please vote. All right, motion passed. 8.0, approval of consent agenda items. We have 8.1, bills for payment, February 2022. I read through all these? Yeah. Supplemental pay for February 2022, board policies DCB and KKB for the third reading. Contractual agreement with the Great Circle Academy of Kansas City. Approve the Hope Squad affiliation agreement. Request to give away SMS books. Northland Caps memorandum of understanding. Winter Guard travel request 8.8. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you for breaking down the payments based on funds. I think that really helps present on kind of where our funds come in, where the money goes. So thank you.
All right, no other discussion. Please vote. Motion passed. 9.0 communication or correspondence.
Okay, before I get into that, Randy, would you pull up the slideshow that I sent you? As far as correspondence, you have two thank yous, one from Eagle and one from Maple. The Board Appreciation Week is actually next month, but the elementary schools wanted to celebrate a little early. So you have a thank you from those schools, and of course you have all the treats and notes at your stations as well. I'll move on to the board priorities update, if that's okay.
Yep.
Randy has pulled up a PowerPoint presentation that he is, if he's going to share that too, yeah. So you have that shared to your screen. So I attended a workshop on the teacher shortage we're currently experiencing in our country. And it was a very, very good workshop. That it was very it was a little scary. I learned a lot about the status of this situation in our country. We've heard about this coming for a few years, but we're starting to experience it now, wholeheartedly in our school district. So I wanted to share some slides from you from this day and a half conference that I went to. I pulled out some highlights. This first one here, long-term trends in the production of teachers. You can see that in the 70s, we were really putting out teachers at a high rate, and then that drops down, and then kind of goes up a little bit and then plateaus, and then you see our current drop. Now, hopefully there, the 18-19 school year where it starts to flip up, hopefully that is an indicator that we might be able to turn a corner. But we're seeing a reduction in a lot of positions, not just teaching positions. Kim and I are going to run some data on the number of applications that we have. For example, we're recommending an elementary principal tonight. We had 20 applications for that position. We typically have more than that for principal positions. So Randy, if you go to the next slide. So opportunities for women, you can see here education and business. Opportunities in business for women has certainly gone up through the years, and women have taken advantage of those opportunities. But what coincides with that is the number of women going into education in the downward trend. Randy, if you go to the next slide. So degrees trends in education versus other fields. You can see in education from 05 to 06 to 18-19, down 22%. The degrees awarded in the field of education, down 22%. And then you can see that's not the case for other degrees that have been awarded. They've actually gone up quite a bit. Go to the next slide, Randy. Teacher education program completions, kind of along those same lines, the percentage change there is 32%. Going to go to the next slide. There is seems to be a reduced interest in teaching as a long-term phenomenon. Definitely increased career opportunities for women in other fields, which is a good thing. The number of bachelor's degrees conferred in education has declined, not the case for other fields. Completions are down. We have not seen widespread program closures, but one of the people that spoke said this is what would be coming next because just the numbers of people enrolling in these programs in universities is going down. So they anticipate we'll start to see some closures. The next slide is very, very telling and not surprising. High school students cite pay as the #1 reason for disinterest. 63% cited that as their #1 reason for disinterest in going into education. And then you can see the other reasons there as well. Not much opportunity for career development. Wouldn't be good at it. How about this one? I don't like working with children. Probably a good idea then that you do not go into education. Key teacher shortage statistics. There's some good information in here. Made the headlines in every single state in 2021. If you think about it, you're hearing a lot more about this too, and the media outlets that we're exposed to here in the Kansas City metropolitan area. 2/3 of school districts currently report experiencing teacher shortages. In 15-16, 79% of schools reported vacancies, and 36% of these reported their vacancies were very difficult to fill. For the first time ever, a majority, so 54% here of parents discouraged their children from becoming teachers. It's the first time that has been the majority. My mother, who was a teacher, discouraged me from going into education. And eventually she ended up encouraging me when she figured out, you know what, that's what he's meant to do. But that's pretty scary. You know, a lot of educators will tell you they discourage their kids from going into education. That's very unfortunate. Teacher preparation enrollment was down by 1/3. 55% of teachers are planning to leave the classroom earlier than anticipated. So over half, pretty startling. Next slide, teacher salaries. Nearly 1 in 5 teachers work a second job. Teachers earn a maximum of less than $60,000 in about 1/4 of US districts. And it's impossible to earn $100,000 in 90% of districts. In 42 states, 10-year veteran teacher who heads a household of 4 would be on public assistance. Among teachers planning to leave because of the COVID pandemic, 64% said the pay wasn't sufficient to merit the risk. And the US ranks close to last among developed nations in teacher salaries. Next slide, more about teacher pay. Nearly half of the teachers surveyed reported their salary was not sufficient to keep them in the classroom. 2/3 reported their salary was either insufficient or they were not sure if it was sufficient enough to retain them. And then, you know, more statistics about the salary not being sufficient to keep teachers in the classroom. Next slide, Randy. 45% of teachers reported they can't continue for the medium to long term on their current salary. So more of the same message there. The next one, 91% of teachers believe low salaries contribute to local teacher shortages. Now this next slide is one that probably many of the educators in the room are familiar with. And this is the progression that the teachers are said to go through their first year teaching. And I think that this is the case for every teacher, every year, especially these days, as we struggle through our current struggles. And, you know, you start off really high in anticipation, you're excited about school starting. And as the year goes on, you kind of get drugged down a little bit, and then you're a little disillusioned, and then you come back up on the other end. And you can see, of course, at the bottom there, the months of the year that correspond with kind of where you're at and how you're feeling. So I don't know that we get as far low as veteran educators as a first year teacher does. Hopefully not, but there's still a curve to every school year. So one of the ideas that I picked up and sure did appreciate was that when we provide teachers with some type of stipend or additional monetary incentive, we time that with the month that the teachers tend to feel could use a little pick me up, if you will, whether it be, you know, October and January or October and February. So I thought that was a good slide to share. Then, you know, so what are the solutions? You know, you spent a day and a half, Dr. Schutz, at this conference, and, you know, what were some of the ideas that were kicked around? Well, some of them will take a big change, you know, a big change in attitude in our country and how people view the profession, a big change in what's currently going on legislatively around our country. And I'll tell you, it really scares me what's going on legislatively around our country. While I was at this conference on a break, I was checking my Facebook page and I saw two different states, Arizona and Indiana, I believe, two different states where one bill, I believe, made it all the way through the House and their state legislation, and the other bill, it had been introduced, right? So this legislation requires teachers, or it would require teachers to post their lesson plans for an entire school year. Kansas is looking at that same bill. Okay, so this is a popular concept, evidently, because there's 3 states right off the top of my head that are doing this or looking at doing this. You wouldn't hand a doctor a stack of papers and say, here's your patients for the next year, develop a plan for each of them without having even seen the patients, right? Teachers have to develop a relationship with individual students and their class to work with them to understand what it is their class needs and what individual students need. It's that kind of mentality that is pushing, one of the things that's pushing teachers out of the profession. And so I have on here on my list of potential solutions is that we defeat legislation that tries to do those kinds of things. You know, our teachers went to school and have devoted their their lives at a much lower pay rate, and we need to respect the profession and what it is that what they're able to do with our kids. So other things on here, university partnerships. A lot of states have, I know of at least a few states that presented that have partnerships with universities in their state where they take like paraprofessionals and that aspire to be teachers, and in school districts, they provide the coursework for them to take those classes free of charge, no cost. You can get your degree from us in your school district, and we will do this for you free of charge. And another layer on that that's being done is students that are in high school that aspire to be teachers, they can begin their coursework right alongside those paraprofessionals. And then when they graduate high school, they're done with their associate's degree. They're 2 years into school, and that's free up to that point. So that would be some tremendous partnership that would be required, not just at the university level, but at the state level, monetarily. Some school districts are paying for the programs, for people to go through the programs. If you come teach with us, that's good, would be very, very expensive. It's not something that I believe that we could pull off, especially at this point in time. But I'm just telling you some of the things that are going on around the state. Provide FTE that support classroom teachers. So we spoke, we had our key communicator meeting at Horizon last night. Susan was able to attend. And there was a parent there that from the North Kansas City School District. And she was able to reference, for example, our behavior interventionists. We have one in every school. And that's not a resource that they have. And it's one that she would certainly appreciate in her school district. So, and one of the things that I'm hearing loud and clear from our teachers this school year is that it's not all about money. You know, we went through the statistics on pay, and pay is on the list, right? People do what they do for a living. Pay is not number one, but remember, pay is on the list. So, but what I'm hearing from teachers is, Todd, it's not all about the money. It's the support that we get from the school district, from the administration, the resources that you provide. For example, the assistant principals. We used to have an assistant principal in every school. We kept 2 of those positions to save $200,000, right? A fiscally responsible thing to do. And, you know, that message loud and clear from our staff as well, that that's a resource that our staff needs, wants, and appreciates. You heard from the guidance counselors a couple weeks ago. That is an example of a level of support that is very helpful to teachers, because you're supporting their students, right? The cadet, we have a cadet teaching program. We have high school students that aspire to be teachers. We have, Michelle, the recruitment and retention grant. We're going to do something, kind of pour some gas on that fire as well for cadet teachers.
We in the Grow Your Own grant that we received from investing scholarships for the students who complete that program and who aspire to go on to 4-year school or 2-year school to pursue education.
So our very own, and we have a lot of alumni that teach in the school district, and that's exciting. That's fantastic. I think that we can do more to celebrate those cadet teachers, the people under our own roof that want to grow up and be teachers. Some school districts, they have a signing day when someone declares, I'm going to school to be a teacher. They have a signing day, like if you got a full ride scholarship to play football at D1 school, you know, so that it's a real celebration when people choose that as a career. And so that's how they handle that. Here's one for you: recruit people to student teach in your school district. We want people to student teach here. And if you do student teach here, we're going to start you on step 2 of the salary schedule in your first year teaching. That's something that I thought was interesting. You know, we do this number 5 here. We do interviews to hire people, right? Obviously, we do exit interviews or exit surveys. We want to hear from people when they're leaving. What about stay interviews? And that's a concept that I was very intrigued by. We do our rounding sessions, as you know. We do the listening tours, as you know, but I don't think we can do enough listening, and stay interviews is another way to accomplish that. Narrow the focus is something that I hear more and more of from our staff. You know, we continue to add things to our areas of responsibility. We want to get more and more done, and everything's important. Everything's a big rock in our jar, right? There's not any pebbles. Everything we've got to do is a big rock, and we never take any of those rocks away. We just continue to add and add and add. There's an author by the name of Jamie Vollmer that talks about, he provides a really great illustration from 1950 to present day, and what we're requiring schools to do. You think about technology instruction. You think about, not only do we have before school care, but we have after school care. We feed them some meals. You know, it's quite possible that a child can come to school and never have a meal at home because they've been at school so long that day, getting dropped off early in the morning and picked up, you know, late at night. So we add and add and add to the things we want to do and the things we want to accomplish, but we never take anything away, never take anything off the plates of our teachers. And then, of course, salary. So, you know, it's one of those things where you are a little discouraged, and you don't walk out like, okay, here's our action plan. We're going to do this, this, and this. But one of the things that was really hit upon is that we've got to educate people on this problem. People have to understand the data, and you have to understand your data in your local district and in our area. So I'm going to get with the cooperating school districts in the metro and try to put together KC Metro activity, much like what we did here with people all around the country. And it was a great networking opportunity, problem solving discussions. And so that's one of the things that I know I can do in my sphere of influence in our metropolitan area. So again, I was there a day and a half, really, really critical topic. Very, very important that we understand what's going on so that we can have a better idea of what we need to do moving forward. And I wanted to bring it to your attention this evening. Question?
Thank you for this presentation. I really like the year of the teacher, right? And the dip and the disillusionment. Frankly, from a healthcare perspective, we're dealing a lot of this with a lot of nurses, right? Who are similarly burned out and tired. And how do we provide them with the things that make a difference? And they're getting substantial shift bonuses and things where the money piece isn't a factor, but how can we go help with that? And so it's a lot of those other things, right? Like access to mental, physical health. And so I think as we talk about this, what are some things that we could do? We've got gymnasiums. Are they available for staff to go use and work out and have mental health breaks and physical health breaks and things like that? So I love some of the ideas, and I think it'd be good to spend some time and figure out how best we can help with some of those things.
And as we continue to educate ourselves, it's important that we have our arms wrapped around it, because we are in the fall starting a new strategic plan. And so I think being well informed will be important going into that process.
I kind of think it's not a friend in Texas who his profession was not teaching. He's an athletic trainer who has a bachelor's degree. That district brought him on and has like a on the job training type program because they have such an issue in his jurisdiction where they're living. So I'd be curious to see, from a progressive standpoint, as you work with the metropolitan group, what are some action strategies that we can hold on to and start committing dollars and investments to start growing. And, it gets back to that alignment with the city opportunity and growing our commercial capability within our own taxing jurisdiction. So we can continue to try to move the needle and increase salaries to be competitive as those resources start to shortfall and impact. Can we still remain and be viable and competitive in our market, in our region, to keep pulling people this direction? And then looking at all those other tangible benefits that other districts might not have that we do have, like a behavioral interventionist, and how do we continue to support those initiatives? Yeah, I'll be curious to see this one's going to be a big one, I think.
One of the things you showed up there, you showed the statistics for women in education, but not men in education. I realize that education is a very female heavy occupation, but if you were to stack up both the women that are going in education and the men in education, it'd be interesting to see if it's even worse yet.
I thought it was
Go
on
back
that
to the
graph.
first slide, Randy.
I think it was the blue
I
line.
think they do, man.
Men, the first line graph, men are the bottom line there.
Oh, great.
Yeah, green.
Oh, it said time sheet speaking
Mhm.
when it was up here.
Oh,
It was over that, so we couldn't see what that was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll recant that one. The other two things that I would agree with Ian, this is not going to be a one-dimensional solution. But boy, I liked how you presented the narrow focus, because you said a lot of things that I've been trying to say for quite a while. And you've said it before, we can do we can do anything, we just can't do all things. I'm a real fan of us figuring out what it is that we want to do well at Smithville and do those things well. And some of the other things might just have to take a backseat or go away. And I don't know what those are.
Right.
But when we do have a limited pool of resource, and no matter how much tax money we get, we're still going to have a limited pool of resources. How do we do what we want to do and do it well with that limited resources? One of the things is have that laser focus. So I'm a real fan of that, and I would strongly encourage us over the next year or two to really focus in on what does Smithville want to do better than anybody else in the metro.
And it's interesting just how challenging that discussion can be due to mandates, all of the things that we're required to do, right? And those things just roll out of the Jefferson City as well. And many of them unfunded mandates, right? So we have all of these things, all these trainings that we have to do and whatnot. And it reminds me of one of my mentors in a district that he worked in prior to being my superintendent. He said this guy was a strategic planning guru. I mean, he was very, very intelligent in that regard. And his previous school district, they put together a strategic abandonment committee. Strategic abandonment. What are things that we're still doing that we don't need to be doing anymore? What can we get rid of? And he said the only thing that was abandoned was the committee, because that is really hard to do. And there's a bunch of educators in this room, and if we were all to make a list of what are the most important 5 things or 3 things that we need to do, there'd probably be 30 things on that list. And and I'm not at all negating. I mean, obviously I believe that is the kind of conversations that we need to be having. It's very, very challenging though. But I think we need to engage in those kinds of conversations. The state of Missouri, this is becoming more and more widely reported on. The state of Missouri has provided some grant monies, Michelle referenced. Every school district in the state gets $10,000 for, is that the grow your own? And then for retention, to hang on to the teachers that we currently have, by the way, is just as, and I would say more important than the recruitment, is to keep the people that we have now. They're already here. They're already part of our family. They're already committed to our vision and mission and getting the things done that we want to get done. They know our culture. They're in. So we will receive about $90,000, $93,000 for that effort. So, and the state of Missouri is using the, some federal money that, that all states got for that effort. They set aside some of that for this. There's something going through, a bill going through nationally right now. I haven't had a chance to study it and see what that's about. But we're going to need some help from, legislators, from government, financially and otherwise, from universities, to be able to go through and get your coursework completed for free, or at least much, cheaper. It's going to take a lot of commitment from a lot of different groups. But
federal or state?
It's federal.
it goes through the state. So we get it from DESE, but they got it from the federal government. Anyway. I'm sorry I took so much time, but very, very critical topic. And I appreciate your patience and you indulging me.
How many, we are going to vote later. We're looking at Kim. How many applications did we get for that teacher that we are hiring tonight? We're hiring a couple. But how many elementary school applications? I remember at one point we were getting 200 plus applications for
We
a few
received
job
I
openings.
think it was about 26 applications
Yeah,
that we screened.
so like 10% of,
Mhm.
even in 5 years. That's
I haven't asked Kim and her assistant to do this yet. And she doesn't know. When I said we're going to run some data, she didn't know that was coming. But that's part of, being aware of what's going on here. And so we're going to run some comparisons, Kim, on applications that we, get through this hiring season for each position and compare those to previous hiring seasons, and then pre-COVID too, is pretty important to know that data as well. So.
Yeah, we did something very similar for the
of about 400 applications within a month versus 13. And it was astonishing. Just the rate at which we could employ people has drastically changed from pre-COVID to after. And I imagine, you know, some of this is exactly in line with teaching professions as it is several other operational professions.
All right, thank you. 9.3, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services, Dr. Credicle.
Thank you. I just have a few things to update the board on and to actually ask you a question. The first on the list is the program evaluation rotation. We have experienced that twice now. And so we were wondering if you had any feedback. Is that working well for you? It seems like the conversation is really rich and you have an opportunity to really dive in. Is there something that you would suggest to make it better? Just wanted some feedback to make sure that we're hitting the mark as far as the structure and the information being provided.
I really like the memo and the, you know, what's working well and what's not working well and where we need help. I think that's really helpful because it allows us to kind of get prepared for that conversation and have a meaningful dialogue in the room with the individuals. So I think that's working phenomenal. And I like that we have a couple of them, but not too many of them, so we don't feel rushed and we can really have an honest conversation. And I know not every group can have true representatives here, but it, you know, like when the counselors were here, we really had a phenomenal conversation because they were here and able to share their thoughts.
Yeah, that's, you know, my feedback is if we can have representation from those areas at the in the meeting, I think that's incredibly valuable. But just the fact that, you know, how we used to do it to now and how we're dedicating kind of a segment of time where we're not mixing it in with everything else, absolutely love it. I feel like we're not rushing. We can have a really good conversation, which just helps us better understand challenges.
I would say continue with it. I really like it too. It gives me that time to devote to reading through all of it and not hurrying. And just like I do agree with Jeff, you know, where people are putting suggestions for things that, you know, we might do in the future and representation if possible. That really makes it real, I guess. Yeah.
Having ever rated teachers. Get a good idea what's going on.
Thank you. We appreciate that. I have two other items to update the board on. First, we are getting into assessment season. So just wanted to let you know that on March 29th, we will be administering the ACT to 136 juniors, and that test administration is paid for by the district. We actually, for 3 years, we were required by the state to have every junior take the assessment, and the state paid for it then. Well, that's probably the one test that means something to kids. And so when they stopped paying and it stopped being required, that was something we wanted to continue for at least the students who wanted that opportunity. And so we've been doing that for several years now. But we're also, we have about 130 seniors who are planning to graduate that have not taken any kind of a post-secondary assessment. So I've reached out to ACT to find out what it would take for us to administer the work keys here. And that is an assessment that is specific to your readiness for the workplace. And then we also have the Asvab as an option. So we'll be setting up some options for kids to sign up for one of those two assessments before they graduate so that they have that requirement met. We're also working on our MAP schedule. So at the elementaries, we'll be taking the MAP test the last week of April and the first 2 weeks of May. At the secondaries, we'll be doing our grade level and end of course exams the first 3 weeks of May. That is also the time at the high school where we have all of our AP exams the first 2 weeks of May. So it's very busy with testing and all of those opportunities for our kids. But just wanted to keep the board apprised of that. And so all of the behind the scenes stuff is in the works and we're getting geared up. Then lastly, unless you have any questions about assessments, I just wanted to share with the board that we are working on an RFP for our consultant for strategic planning and hope to have that out soon. And I think Dr. Schutz wanted to follow up with some questions from the board.
We would like to bring the name of the consultant.
Is our plan. So we've got a draft RFP not quite ready to publish. So I know the board has a keen interest in strategic planning in that process and how we go about it. So would you like to see that RFP prior to it going out? Typically, we just send those out and we evaluate them here in-house, and then we bring you a recommendation. Is there an interest on the board for more engagement from the board in that selection process? What is your pleasure?
I don't necessarily think we need to see it beforehand. I think it would maybe be good if one of us were part of the selection, part of the group to evaluate.
So we will solicit proposals, and then we'll let you know that timeline, and then we'll make you aware of when we're going to review the submissions, and then invite board input in those reviews. And as long as there's no more than 3 of you, then as many as 3 could participate if you would like.
Do you have key service deliverables and milestones already identified, or are you just kind of open?
Is it more of a request for bid, or is it a true request for proposal where we're allowing the company to dictate what their vision is to us?
There are some things that we would like that we
Want to dictate. For example, I would really like the
process to include us defining our portrait of a graduate. What characteristics do we expect a student when they leave Smithville schools to have? There are many districts that have done this in conjunction
with their real world learning. And I feel like that will help us focus our discussion with strategic planning. One thing that the process that we've used for the last couple of years is very wide open. And you'll notice that in our strategic plan, there's never anything that's directly related to academics, and we're a school district. So I think if we identify those characteristics of our students and use that as our guiding light, then we're going to be much more focused, and we won't have as many quite the variety of tasks that we've seen in the past. So that is part of what I would like to see. So I think there will be some parameters that we'll set, and we would like to include these types of things. But the process that the consultant uses would be up to them.
Yeah, so I think it'd be interesting to see what.
And what you're hoping to accomplish. I think that would be beneficial to see, but I don't want it to hold you up either. I would just like insight to it.
we can include it in a memo once we have a draft.
Perfect, yeah.
Thank you.
9.4 Executive Director of Support Services, Robert Hedgeworth.
Thank you.
Information about our construction project. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick. Okay, so construction update for February. Again, our project's on the 2020 bond campaign. And our activity center is coming right along. You can see it more and more being developed. When we used to give construction updates about Eagle, it was much more anticipated because you didn't drive by it every day. But of course, as folks drive by it on campus, they can easily see some of the progress that's going on. We're very lucky where we're at right now as far as timeline goes. In talking with other districts and other projects, a lot of things have been delayed, whether it was labor, whether it was materials. And so Jay Dunn and DLR has done a very good job of anticipating some of those things and working through those. So we are still on time. We're still looking at late May. The only thing we're starting to see now is some of the intricate things within the building that might be delayed, that won't delay the completion of it. For example, in the wrestling room, we have a suspension system underneath the mats that is going to be delayed till July. So the mats will just be on the concrete, which is what we have right now in our wrestling room until those suspension systems can be delivered and then installed and then the mats put over the top. So little things like that really don't affect the functionality, but there's just some ancillary things here and there that are coming up just a little bit. So just want to keep you informed on that. So here's the outside of the building. This is would be the west side. That door you see with sheathing over the top is actually where our teams would exit and then go down to the playing field. And then, of course, you see the paneling being put on behind the backing and the attachments there that is on the side of the insulation. And so you can see it coming along quite nicely on that side. And then this is the east side where you can see they're coming around to that front south side, going to meet there in the middle. So definitely making some progress on the paneling on the outside. This is an inside look at our locker room. The lockers actually have been delivered and are sitting in the larger area. They just haven't been placed in this room yet. But this is standing in the corner of a current locker room, and then you would have lockers lined up around the outside. And the configuration of those lockers is not just one tall locker. There's about 6 lockers in a section that are just small for small items like shoes, valuables, and stuff like that. And so there's many different lockers that are going to fit in this area. This is the training room. You can see the windows on the south side of that training room. So this is the office of the training room. So Jenny Fight will continue to have her facility up near our main competition gym in the school, then also have this area down here that's also going to have a cooling tub. So when those temperatures reach higher levels, if there was a student athlete that was overheated, they could quickly get to this area and have that availability, which is another reason why it's so advantageous to have this facility down by that athletic field, as well as AD equipment and things like that. So for the safety of our students. This is a shot looking back at, you'd be standing in what would be the current weight room on the first floor, looking back at some of the offices and training rooms. You can kind of see there's not a lot of sectioned off drywall in this area. This is very much a multi-purpose building with open areas. And so that's the little bit of drywall you see for some of the offices and training areas and locker rooms. Everything else is big open spaces that can be changed over time, used in different ways, used by different programs. And so you can see the large open areas that our students will have for their activities. This is our timeline. You can kind of see the drywall. We're finishing up in late February. I would say it's about 75 to 80% complete right now. There's a couple of spaces upstairs they're finishing up. And then in March, they're looking to install that athletic flooring. And then starting to bring in that equipment in late April, early May, that includes some of the weight racks, the mats. What's interesting, the mats is when they ship the mats are actually 1 foot to 2 feet oversized. And once they're in the facility for a while from humidity, they shrink to size. And so, those are as large as the areas. And so those are interesting things that we work through as we get these things installed and ready to go for our students. And we're still looking at a late May completion date. So that way we can have an open house and let people look through the facility. At any time, if anybody would like to have a tour of the facility in its current construction, let me know and I'll set that up with J.E. Dunn. They'll ask you to wear some PPE and of course, schedule time so they're ready for you. But anytime we can schedule a group to go in and tour that building and take a look at where they're at right now. Out here to the east of the building where we have our shot put and discus, you're kind of seeing them start to clean that up and bring that area back to competition. You might have seen them put sod down, which is perfect timing with the snow coming, because actually snow is really good with sod. So that way they won't be dealing with mud and stuff with the discus throwers. And then that shot put facility will be put back in place. So that way, when February 28th comes around for the start track season, the athletes will be there and ready to go and have that facility. So any questions that I can answer on the activity center? The next thing I have is Horizon HVAC. We have all the modules and units ordered for a summer install. So we will not have summer school at Horizon. That building won't be used for any academic purposes in the summer. So we can get that space ready for the HVAC removal of the old units, pull those off with the cranes, put the new ones on, and do the testing and calibrations of those units. So everything's on track with Horizon HVAC and with the activity center. So happy to report. Just some ancillary things on the inside that just cause us a little bit of delays, but nothing with the construction of the building itself.
We do have control over this stuff too.
We do. We sure do.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just gonna say at the Horizon meeting that we had the other night that I was there, HVAC was a very important thing. One of the teachers actually called it sexy, very interesting for them because they are very, very cold. So I think I'm glad that we're getting this done and it was very, we talk about, money too, but that was a very important thing to him. We have to have our climates, to where kids and teachers can work also. So I hope we can continue with that. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, the second piece of information I wanted to share is this last week, we met with Project Velvet, who is in charge of the Golden Plains Technology Center that you're seeing constructed on the south side of town. We met with them to talk about, basically the current status and where we're at. And so they talked about that in March that they're going to have a reveal of who the parent company is that is truly behind the data center. Everybody has their thoughts of who that is, but in March they'll actually reveal that. And then we talked a little bit of the financials around that because of the delays. Many of the delays in nature were discussed, had to do with working with the city of Kansas City and permits and all the things that have to happen to have the infrastructure to bring to that area. So in talking with them, they were going to rework their pro forma and give us an update. We were able to pull out of them, since they're about a year behind their previous schedule they gave us. Would it be safe to say that their previous pro forma would be close, but we've pushed everything a year forward? And they did say that, yes, that would be close to where we would be, but we still want to give you an updated pro forma. So we are working with that. When we get that updated pro forma, and using the old one just as a placeholder right now to look at future revenues and expenses. And next month, we will have some long-term projections for revenue and expenses that we're looking at going forward, but especially with the revenue side to show what that pro forma looks like for that revenue and how that affects our budget going forward and our reserves. So just want to let you know we're working on that. And we'll have more detailed information in our March board meeting to kind of show you going forward.
Robert, is there any way to forecast the equipment property association?
It's all the equipment doing the excavation work right now. So as we go into our new budget cycle, we can kind of pull some of that assessment in.
Sure.
And
They did not give us any details of where that sits. Typically, wherever that equipment sits on January 1st is how it's assessed. And so they did not give us any insight of if that equipment will still be there on January 1st, if they'll be offsite somewhere else. So we didn't get, are they on Platte County side? Or are they gonna be on North Kansas City side? Because there's 3 districts involved with this project. So unfortunately, did not give us any insight to that part of the puzzle.
Yeah, when I drive by every day, it definitely looks on Smithville School.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, they did not get that detail. We were, in my opinion, by some crafty questions that was asked during the meeting, we were able to get them to divulge that, yes, the pro forma they previously gave us would be valid just a year behind. So I felt like we were lucky to get that out of them because they were very vague in a lot of their answers until they could give us their detailed pro forma. So
Very confident in the numbers that are in that pro forma. The scope and size of the project, and those numbers have not changed. They're very adamant about that. It's just the only thing that's changed is the timeline.
great, thank you.
From the audience.
Am I unmuted? This is an opportunity for members of the audience to make comments to the board. A total of 20 minutes will be allocated for public comment. Speakers will be heard in the order in which they are notified, in which they notify the superintendent of their desire to speak. Individuals addressing the board should state their name, address, and limit their comments to no more than 5 minutes. Items or issues related to specific personnel should not be discussed in open session. So tonight we just have one person signed up, Whitney Carlisle.
Whitney Carlisle. A couple weeks ago, a board meeting with program evaluations was held. This was very informative. I appreciate the counselors in attendance sharing very directly how students in our district are suffering due to the past few years. hearing about depression and anxiety numbers doubling, students unable to process their emotions or even handle deadlines. One stated, "I don't know that our children ever recover from this." I wrote in my notes, "We failed our kids." I fought for what I felt was in their best interest, but I wish I would have fought even harder. Many of the negative effects from the past 2 years could have been avoided. Parents were pleading for policies to change. We knew the negative consequences that would come from what was forced on them, and we now have the numbers and situations to prove that. It is not an attack on teachers when you now have parents wanting to be informed, involved, and are deeply concerned with what our children are being exposed to. It is a good thing. Parents want to know the details of their children's education. Clearly, there is a need for mental health assistance for many of our students. My heart breaks for those suffering. It is vital that they get the help that they need. What I am advocating for tonight is that parents be the first contact when dealing with such a sensitive and serious subject such as suicide. Today, a survey was given to students that involved suicide. Parents at our school were not made aware that this was happening until after it was given, thanks to my daughter informing me. Here are a few questions from that survey. Did you ever consider attempting suicide? Did you make a plan about how you would attempt suicide? How many times did you actually attempt suicide? What did you do? Check all that apply. Cut, bit, scratched, or hit myself on purpose to hurt myself. Swallowed more medicine than a doctor told me to take to hurt myself. Used drugs or alcohol to hurt myself. Swallowed something on purpose that was not food, drink, or medicine in order to hurt myself. Burned myself. Pulled my hair or eyelashes. Punched a hard object like a wall or door. If it makes you uncomfortable hearing this, imagine how it made elementary kids feel who just days before were passing out Valentines in their classes. Many of these kids did not feel comfortable with the questions being asked to them. This is why the people who know them best, their parents, need to have access to preview something like this prior to it being given out to our kids. And what about those children who are struggling with mental health? If they answered honestly, what happens now for them? This was an anonymous survey, so their parents will not be informed of their answers. Those overseeing something as serious as suicide prevention are the same people who thought it was okay to have young kids with speech delays cover their face all day at school. They are the same experts who approved 7th graders who are already struggling emotionally to isolate in front of a screen for half the school year. Had parents been listened to then, perhaps we wouldn't be doing so much damage control now. Please don't make that same mistake and not involve parents with this extremely serious topic. Include parents prior to topics being introduced to our kids, not after. Tonight, you voted to approve a suicide prevention program for each of our elementary schools. With this being such an important topic, I would have liked a discussion to be had publicly. In that agreement included on the agenda tonight, it states, quote, "Only licensed advisors may have access to curriculum and password protected resources. School agrees never to share, reproduce, or transfer any part of program to another school, organization, or individual." How can you ensure parent involvement in that program? Have any of you seen the detailed curriculum prior to voting for it tonight? As a candidate running for school board, I have heard countless times the desire for a board member who will ask questions. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions on a subject parents will have many questions about. We fill out a form to allow our kids to watch a PG movie, but today didn't check with parents when suicide or drug use was talked about. I appreciate the last board meeting. It was noted that we do live in a conservative area. Please be mindful of that. Again, this is no way an attack on our teachers. They are already overburdened with all that continues to be pushed on them. For that reason and many others, parents must be included with this topic. Please better welcome involved parents. We truly want the very best for our kids. Thank you.
really brief tonight.
As you can see there, I'm muted. No, I'm not. As you can see there in the packet, our substitute fill rate is improving significantly. Student attendance is holding pretty well steady at about 90–91%. So that's good. 93 to 95% is our norm for student attendance. And the number of cases continues to drop in the district and has since mid-January. This week in your agenda here, it says of last week, it was 19. This week's 11. I think the week before the 19, it was 33, and then 50 something before that. So, I mean, it's just continued to go down and down and down. So the environment, the COVID environment continues to improve. Anything to add, Denise? Okay.
All right, 10.2.
10.2, general financial review. FY22 midterm budget update, I believe.
Randy and, or not Randy, Robert and Wayne are going to cover this one.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So in an effort to be, provide more information for the board, we've included in your board packet review this time an actual revenue and expenditures to date summary. We've concluded basically 7 months of the fiscal year, about 58% of the fiscal year. So we took the opportunity to provide you just basically a summary of the amount of revenue we received to date, the amount of expenditures that we've accrued to date, and by function. So, on the revenue side, for example, year to date, we've received about 74% of the total projected revenue that we thought that we would receive for the year. Again, just a real quick reminder, about 55% of our revenue comes from local sources, which is local taxes. If you kind of look into the weeds a little bit, you can see that we've actually on the local level, we're probably, we're close to more like 97%. So we've received roughly 97% of our local revenue year to date. And again, it's because everybody had to get their taxes paid by end of December, and then we received a payment from the county in January. So that money's there. About 36% of our money comes from the state. Again, that's an ongoing payment that we get typically every month from the department. And we get about 6% of our money from the federal government. Right now, I can tell you that based on last year, the amount of money that we've received from the federal government is actually lower than expected at this time. One of the reasons, quite frankly, is because of the third round of recovery funds. Missouri, there was about a little over 200 billion with a B, $200 billion allocated across the United States. All the states in the union received relief money for education. Missouri is the only state, 49 other states have approved and allocated their funds as that relief. Missouri has not. Missouri has not. The legislature has not allocated those funds. They actually debated a bill today. It's House Bill 3014. It was debated today and it's still not made it out. The reason it's not made it out is because when it was put up, it's has other items baked into it. So it's not just this education funding. It's also Medicaid expansion, which is a very big topic, particularly in the state of Missouri. It also has baked in there a 5.5% pay increase for state employees. And then there's some other little pet projects or ideas that have been baked into this. So this relief money for all the public schools in the state of Missouri is being held up as we speak. The legislature has until March 24th to get that allocated and distributed. If it's not, then it's repurposed back out to the other 49 states to get a small piece of that. And Missouri gets nothing. So if you have an opportunity and see, contact somebody in Jeff City, we've done that. We're making efforts to speak to folks to make sure that, that effort is heard. We would like them to try to just pull that out and get that piece done. And if they want to work on the other items, let them work on it. But we can't miss that March 24th deadline. They're actually going to be going into recess here for spring break coming up soon. So we're just waiting. We're waiting. But for the Smithville School District, that's a little over $600,000. Again, of federal dollars that we are anticipating and quite frankly have baked into the budget for this year. So I'll answer any questions about that revenue and expense report either this evening or into the future. And we can, quite frankly, if you would like, we can provide this report indefinitely every month if you would like it. It's part of our software. It's when we balance the books, it's there. We just have to print it out and stick it in there. So we can continue to do that.
So we missed the 600 that due to the black or red.
Yep, great question. So right now, the current budget without those funds is showing, we're in the black with those funds in there, about $189,000. If those funds do not happen, we will be about a $300,000 deficit. So it'll move the needle. Of the 606,000, about 400 of it is basically supplanting costs that we already have. So it's kind of a wash. So it really doesn't move the needle the same. It would make us go negative about 300. Yep.
As far as the report goes, Wayne, I like it. I like the revenue and I like the revenue expense. The one that's simply expense is still 19 pages. And there are a lot of lines in here that's zero across the board. There's no expense in that area. We could probably just not present that. So this is a shorter document that we weed through. I mean, it's 19 pages. It'd probably be half that if we just eliminated all the zeros. I don't know if that's possible. Just a way to clean it up to make it easier to read.
We can do that. We can do that. Please keep in mind, and those are lines that do not have a budget associated with them. The way the budget is set up though is because there's history. That's why the report. So there's nothing in FY22, but there's history associated with that. That's why it's showing up in the report. But we can move it to Excel and we can take those out and then put it back in PDF.
I understand why they're there. It's just when you're reporting out and it's zero, it's not really worth the time to report it out. It makes my time quicker to read through it.
Yep.
Not a problem. But I like it other than that.
Yep. Thank you. Yep, we'll make sure it's in there.
Yeah, we can do a long form and short form. We'll give you what we currently have, all the long form expenditure, and have a short form that's all the non-zero accounts. So you can see if there's account history in somewhere, but also have the short form that has something if it has a balance in it. So maybe no problem.
All right, any further discussion? All right, 10.3 update on enrollment.
Yeah, you've got the enrollment documents there, and you can see that Karen has removed the 2022 early grads and foreign exchange students that have gone back home. So that takes us from January 19th at 2566 down to 2550. So that is an accurate reflection with those students removed.
Any questions?
All right, 10.4 board policy HH collective bargaining for the first reading.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the board for all of their efforts on this policy. You had a workshop where you really dug deep with legal counsel on this item, and this has been years in the making. You are aware that teachers have had the right to collectively bargain as granted by the Missouri State Supreme Court since the mid-2000s. And we've not had a policy yet to guide us in that regard. So you have before you the first reading of Board Policy HH dealing with collective bargaining, and I recommend you approve the first reading.
This would be the first of 3 readings, just to clarify.
Right.
So I move to approve board policy HH regarding collective bargaining for the first reading.
I will second that motion and add some comments as well. It's unique, 4 years ago when I first started with the board, this was a topic that was heavily discussed and kind of prolonged, and then, other priorities kind of stepped in front of it. So it's gratifying to see it finally move to a point of conclusion. So second that motion.
The motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yes. I would like to see a couple changes to it. They're more clerical in nature than anything else. The watermark on the back reads sample. It ought to read draft, not sample, or be removed altogether. And then there's a note at the end of page 3 that does not look like it should be in final draft. I think that ought to be looked at and determine whether it should be in there or not.
Thank you.
The overall policy hasn't changed though, correct? We're just making okay. So we have a motion and a second on the board. Any other discussion? Did you get the motion and second? Okay, please vote. All right, 11.1. Self-insurance pool update, SIP GKC. Who's taking that one?
I wanted to provide some information to the board. We make an effort to make you aware of our progress in the self-insurance pool and how we're tracking with our medical and dental benefits. This is our 11th year in the pool. And quite frankly, the year's not over, but we're having a good year. We really are. As you recall, last year we were underfunded about, almost $700,000 that we had to make supplemental payments on. This year, we are currently, for the plan year, we're up about $189,000 for the current year. In the course of the 11-year history of being in the pool on the medical side, we're up, I believe, about $60,000 currently as we speak, which is all good news. Each year, we meet with our actuaries to kind of study our current offerings and premiums to set rates or estimated rates, because we're self-funded. We can set the rates wherever we like, but we still meet with those individuals to give us recommendations. And Mercer is a company that we meet with, our actuaries, and Mercer is actually recommending for next year a 13% premium increase for medical benefits. They're saying right now in the market, they're seeing anywhere around an 8% market trend on premiums across the board as far as medical is concerned. They're recommending for us 13% increase, which translates into about $280,000 of additional premiums needed to fund our insurance for next year. Now, I say that not for shock value, but to tell you that these folks are just doing their job. And when they do their job, they look at all the data and they use a 3-year trend in order to establish those recommendations. Well, I can tell you that 3 years ago, if you've been with us, we were 42% over trend. And then we went from 42%, we went down to roughly 12%. And then we went down this year, we're actually negative 1.4%. So they're recommending a 13% increase based on our 3-year trend, but it's quite frankly from what we experienced 3 years ago. So what we believe at this point is we will not need to adjust our rates for next year for our medical benefits, for the board paid benefits. Now, I say that with the understanding that we are a self-insured pool. So we will have to pay for what we use, but we believe right now our rates are at a point that they're sufficient in order to handle all our activity and our claims. On the dental side, they're suggesting a 6.5% increase. The board paid dental is a very small premium. It translates into about $8,000. Again, we're self-insured on the dental side. We too are recommending, or will be recommending, that there's no change in the dental premiums either. We believe administratively in talking through this that we want to try to do everything we can to focus on providing support for our teachers and salary incentives for our teachers, not insurance premiums that quite frankly may or may not be used. I mean, it's a great benefit, don't get me wrong. And it's a precious benefit, but we want to try to put our resources elsewhere versus into insurance premiums. So again, Mercer's recommending 13% on medical, 6.5% on dental. We are suggesting based on the most recent trends that we're going to be able to be okay and leave the rates where they are. So
when is the budget workshop?
The budget workshop is in the first week in May.
Okay.
As Robert's indicated, this week, it was very exciting that we were able to take some of the data we got from the Golden Plains Technology Park discussion. And we took that, if you're familiar with that 1 year, 5-year projection tool that we use to look at revenues and expenditures, we actually carried that out for 10 years. And we've plugged in their pro formas and we show our estimates for revenues for the next 10 years. And we show our expenditures for the next 10 years. And then we've plugged in a line where we're showing those pilot payments in addition to on the revenue side and the impact that has on our school district. It's significant, and there's opportunities that'll be present themselves as a result of that. So we're excited to share that information with you.
Yeah, I'm excited about the updated pro forma in contrast to our expenditures, because this might be the first year that I can recall where we might not have a recommendation to raise insurance premiums since I've been on the board.
Since you've been on the board, that is correct. That's correct. Our last 5 years, we've been pretty steadily increasing premiums. Currently, the board provides 3 100% medical options at $620 per employee per month on the medical side. And we've had to raise those each year for the last several years.
That's good news.
It is great news.
All right, 11.2, Warrior Activity Center, Wrestling Mat Bid Response.
Robert.
Yes, the basically bid response to an RFP we put out for the wrestling mats. Back when you approved the budget for the construction project, these dollars were in the FF&E budget. And so this is just a part of that FF&E budget that was already approved. It's just how we're allocating some of those funds in FF&E. And so because we put out an RFP, because we have dollars that are over 45,000, I present it to the board for approval. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Just includes the wall mats and the floor mats both. It's everything.
They're all very close.
They're all very close. Pretty standard systems about how they handle wrestling mats and installation. And so it's pretty narrow. I was very specific in the RFP about specifications of the mat and what it had to be, the thickness, the type and everything. So that's why you had a pretty, what's that? Correct. Yeah. Yeah. This purchase will go directly in the Warrior Activity Center, whether it's a floor mat or a wall mat.
Okay.
With that, I'll move to approve 11.2 Warrior Activity Wrestling mat bid response.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, please vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passed. 11.3 personnel report. We reviewed the personnel report in executive session and had time to ask questions. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, if not, please vote. Ian? All right, motion passed. 11.4, 2022 to 2023 administrator contracts.
Based on our previous approval of the personnel report, I move to table 11.4 until next month's meeting.
I don't think we do anything. We just don't do anything. Okay, good. 11.5 part-time central office administrator contract.
Yeah, before I address that one, I want to publicly recognize that in your personnel report, you hired Dr. Rachel Marchetti as the next principal of Eagle Heights Elementary. And as you know, Dr. Marchetti is currently assistant principal at the high school. And she's also, she was for several years the assistant principal at the middle school. She's been a sixth grade teacher. She's been a guidance counselor, lots of different experiences. And we're very excited for her and excited for Eagle Heights Elementary. There will be a public announcement, which will happen tomorrow morning. That will go out in an official announcement. So congratulations to Dr. Marchetti and to Eagle Heights Elementary. For 11.5, the part-time central office administrator contract, we've had the assistance of Mr. Wayne Kruger for a couple of years now on a part-time basis, a couple of days a week. And we would like his assistance again for next school year. We are still working through the state audit, still working with the state auditors. And we have some specific things we would like to accomplish in relation to our budget and making our documents more user-friendly and more readable and more transparent to the public. So those are just a couple of things that we would like to enlist Mr. Kruger's support with. So I would recommend that you approve that agreement for an additional year for a couple of days a week with Mr. Kruger.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the part-time contract administrator contract as presented. Any more discussion?
I think we discussed this quite a bit, but I'm still going to go on record saying that I think it's time for us to stand on our own. Wayne, I thank you very much for your service. But I do think it's important for us to start standing on our own on this one.
Any other comments? All right. Please vote. All right, 12.1 miscellaneous.
Yeah, just a few items here.
So first of all, before I forget, I want to mention, earlier tonight, I talked about the key communicator meeting that took place in the Brighton Elementary last night. And you also heard Susan mention that as well. And we had a great meeting. Several staff were there. About how many parents would you say? Seven parents. It was a good discussion, very engaging. Susan, I wanted to give you an opportunity as a board member to share, your thoughts and what you walked away with from the evening.
Just one thing is, if you could check with your buildings. I mean, we had 7 parents. I wish we would have had more. It was an opportunity we put out there to try. I know times are hard to get there, but I appreciate everybody that did come and all the input they gave. Also appreciate the staff that was there. It's very good to hear from staff. I know in the past, I've went to some of those as parents and we didn't hear as many staff. So I appreciate that. So just encouraged, there's going to be more coming up for different buildings coming up. So maybe just seeing if that's something you can come and give us your input. It's a time that you can come and talk. And Dr. Schutz has a little agenda, but then opens it up. And basically we just talked about things that people wanted to have addressed and talked about.
How do you find out about this?
Well, each building principal sets up those meetings, and we've only had one. So the other 4 will take place the rest of the spring. So you can contact your child's building principal about when that meeting is set for your school. So for the board, you have in your memos, at the bottom of every memo, you have every date. And so just make note of that if that's something that you would like to attend in the future. And as Susan mentioned earlier, we did have a teacher call HVAC sexy at this particular meeting last night. And that was in reference to those projects that aren't real visible, like a new building out here, or, things that you see and notice, but are still very, very important. I called them non-sexy and I was corrected by the teachers.
I do have a quick question though. We have the dates established. Mindy, can we not post them and just share them on our Facebook pages? These are the targeted dates for key communicators.
We can do that. Each principal kind of arranges for that communication with those parents, but there's no reason why we can't publish those as well.
So is it a targeted group of parents or is it open?
What we do is we typically open it up. Each school kind of has their own process, but typically we open it up for anybody that would like to attend. And then I always say that an invitation to everyone is an invitation to no one. So we also recruit people to come to the meeting as well. So both.
Okay, because I think, comments that I'm hearing is, I have no problem with us soliciting certain individuals, but if we know the dates, we can openly share those dates. So if people that want to be engaged, they can come engage.
Sure. Again, it's a meeting with each building. Each building principal sets up that meeting.
Sure. So with the understanding that you have a representation with that school entity.
Right.
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 Don't show up to Horizon when your kid goes to Eagle. Type of deal.
Exactly. Okay, so the other items here for you, real quickly, a reminder that the March and April meetings are a week earlier in the month. And I do need to change the date for our 5-3 program evaluation meeting. So if you have your calendars handy, please.
Budget workshop.
That is the budget workshop. I apologize, but I'm going to have to change that date. And I'm sure Mr. Kruger and Mr. Hedgecorth have their calendars handy as well.
Which one are we changing? Tom?
We're changing the May 3rd board, well, not board city liaison, that's the other meeting, the budget workshop. What about May 5th, Cinco de Mayo? Retirement celebration?
We could do it then.
Still could. If we didn't start until, we wouldn't start this meeting till 6.
Margaritas.
You may not bring margaritas. That is against state law. Bring those.
Hey, Denny has a question.
I can't be there on Thursday or Fridays.
Hold on, Denny. All right, Randy, let us know.
I cannot participate on Thursday or Fridays.
Okay. The 9th or 10th? May 9th or 10th? May 9th? Robert? 9th is good? Okay. Wayne, May 9th? Okay, let's change that May 3rd date then to May 9th if we could, please. Thank you.
Was that the budget workshop?
That is budget workshop and program evaluation. 6 o'clock. I appreciate your flexibility. Let's see, item 3. We have a board walkthrough scheduled for 3:25. Michelle, Robert, and I will be at the MASA conference on 3:25. So I need to change that date as well. And we have been doing it on Fridays, but there's no reason why that is required by any means. What about March 29th or 30th?
29th, I'll be giving the ACT.
March 30th. And I know that not everybody can attend those walkthroughs. But I want to get a date that, is suitable for as many as possible. March 30th, board walkthrough on March 30th. That will begin at 8 o'clock. It lasts beyond the lunch hour because now we have 5 schools to tour. So we'll start at 8 o'clock and more information will be forthcoming as we get closer to that date.
That's a no for me.
Denny has a.
I'll get off work at 6 a.m. that morning.
Well, good, then you'll be off in plenty of time to join us at 8 a.m.
Then you stay up all night with me.
Okay. Do you want to change the date so you can participate?
Whatever's for the best of the group. I enjoy we haven't been for 2 years because of COVID. I really enjoy it. But whatever is for the majority.
Well, what about April 1st? April Fool's Day. Mr. Orschlin? What about April 1st? Denny, is that date? No. You're just going to be
Wednesdays,
difficult.
Thursdays, and Fridays right now are bad.
Okay.
April the 5th.
April.
Oh.
We don't want to mess with that. April 6th. That's a Wednesday, April 6th.
April 6th, Denny.
If you're asking me, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays are not good.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Monday, Tuesday it is.
I think Denny's stalling because he knows we're gonna get done before 9.
Did we look at April 29th? Not, I mean, March 29th?
I'm giving ACT, so I would-
Oh,
But that's okay.
yeah, this is getting challenging, so maybe we'll tour without Michelle.
March 29th, Denny?
It's wide open.
Okay. March 29th.
Where are we starting? High school?
High school, 8 o'clock.
What's the last?
Okay. Last item I have is to give you the opportunity to set a date to conduct your self-evaluation and the superintendent's evaluation. So I will leave that to you on when you would like to do that.
So probably a Monday or Tuesday.
Mhm.
No, Tuesday. Monday's the best.
I can do that at night, just not Monday then.
Okay.
Next Tuesday.
You guys are muted if you're just having a discussion with me.
21st. That's next week, right? Denny, are you good next Monday?
Monday, the 21st, I am good.
I think we should start at 6 because that could take a couple hours. And let's do superintendent first or second, because that'll have to be closed.
Yeah, it's you could do superintendents first in the executive session. Followed by the self-evaluation in open, or you can flip flop it.
Let's do the self-evaluation first.
That way the public knows what time.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, just in case we get done or go long.
So 6 PM, board self-evaluation. Followed by closed session for superintendent's evaluation. Okay. And that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Before we adjourn, I just want to say thank you to Sarah for taking over running the meeting this morning or tonight. Haven't been feeling real good, so thank you, Sarah. I let her know about 2:30 this afternoon that it was hers. So short notice, but good job.
Thank you. We will take a motion to close, to adjourn. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Do it.